Hey, hospice leaders, this new OIG report is one you should really be paying attention to. I have it linked in the caption. But the OIG reviewed 100 new admits of patients who had not been hospitalized or visited the ER during the 18 months prior to their hospice admission. And the OIG determined that documentation for 45 of those 100 patients did not satisfy Medicare requirements, so almost half. And they estimated that CMS could have saved approximately $255 million in payments. That is a lot of motivation for CMS to increase scrutiny. And that means that agencies should expect more attention on newly admitted hospice patients who have not recently been hospitalized or visited the emergency department. I recommend you add this to your routine pre-billing audits. When your audit does question the admission, though, it's important for you to determine, were the patients truly admitted too early, or was it simply that the documentation failed to support eligibility at the time of admission? Because from what we see every day at the Amity Group, reviewing hospice documentation from agencies across the country, the majority of the issues are documentation issues and not necessarily true eligibility issues. In our experience, approximately 85% of the concerns we identify involve documentation that does not fully support eligibility, while a much smaller percentage are patients that were actually admitted too early. So the patients met criteria, but the documentation didn't show it. That's what we find most of the time. And that's good news, because documentation can be improved. And that's why proactive chart review is becoming more important than ever. It's no longer that thing we do when we have time, because an experienced hospice auditor can identify documentation problems before they cost your agency a bunch of money. And one thing to be cautious about, though, is that I know there's a lot of excitement around AI-generated documentation, and I personally love technology, and I believe that it can assist greatly with organization and efficiency, but it cannot replace clinical judgment. It only works with the information the clinician provides. So if the underlying assessment is incomplete or the decline isn't clearly documented, AI cannot create supporting evidence that isn't there. So the strongest documentation will always come from well-trained clinicians supported by ongoing chart review education and practical tools designed specifically for hospice, not hybrids of things that were for other service groups. And this is exactly why we built the Amity Group's Audit and Documentation Protection Division. And this is not a new service for us. Our nurse auditors have been reviewing hospice records for years. And every month we review hundreds of charts for agencies across the country. We focus on one question: does the documentation clearly support hospice eligibility if an outside reviewer were to pick up this chart? And if the answer is no, we don't just stop at identifying the problem. We help you fix the documentation problems, and we ensure that they stay fixed. And so when the audits do arrive, because they will, our team has extensive experience supporting agencies through ADRs, TPEs, UPICs, RACs, and appeals all the way to the ALJ. We've helped agencies navigate every stage of this process. And as CMS increases its focus on documentation even more, agencies that review records proactively will be in a much stronger position than those waiting until the audit letters arrive. So if you'd like to learn more about Amity's Audit Documentation Protection Division, or schedule a complimentary conversation about your agency's documentation process, visit our website or reach out directly, because I'd be happy to talk with you and show you how we can help.